Welcome, everybody. My name is Herrera bin Sohail, and I will be your moderator for today. You are joining us for an exclusive webinar in conjunction with Maxhub, where we will be talking about empowering future education. Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. We have an amazing panel with us, and they will be taking us through what they think about education in the ASEAN region. You can interact with them via the chat function, and you can also pose questions to them via the Q&A function. Both of these are available in Zoom. You can find them on the bottom panel. They're really easy and simple to discover. Keep everything civil, keep everything professional, and I hope that you enjoy the conversation today. Before starting off, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. Unfortunately, NCS had a scheduling conflict and were unable to make it today. However, we do have Joe from Lingua Learn, who is replacing the NCS representative and will be sharing his thoughts. Joe, if you could introduce yourself for our audience.
A last-minute change there, but that's great. All good. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Joe Tofield. I've lived in Asia for about 10 years now. Also did a year in Australia. I was regional head of teacher training for a school group for about 4.5 years. Before that, I sold corporate training. Now I run my own company, and I support companies and schools with their training and development. So that's learning needs, supporting learning structures, and I run language courses, training workshops, management stuff, and yeah, stuff like that. Thank you.
Adi, if you could introduce yourself for our audience.
Hello, Adi from Rapvision Digital Media. So, okay, my background is in consultancy for project management. So I started audiovisual, I think, 5-6 years ago. And then I started Rapvision 4 years ago, just right before the pandemic hit. So yeah, we are a local system integrator from Indonesia. So yeah, that's my background.
Perfect. And last but not least, Andrew, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Andrew Wong. I work for Maxhub. I'm the product manager for the Asian market. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I have been the advocate for digital transformations in the various industry, so from a telecom industry all the way to a corporate and education industry. So maybe I'd just like to introduce the companies. So Maxhub is actually a global brand under the CVTEs, and we have 32% of the TV mainboard market in the world. So we are #1 in the interactive flat panels market for corporate as well as education. Thank you.
Let's jump right into it. So education is a unique space, right? Because it's got two end users, so to speak. You've got the students and you've got the teachers, and both of them are in the space interfacing with the exact same technology. When we talk about this technology, right, there's been a huge shift in how much technology is being deployed in education spaces and what kind of technology it is being deployed in education spaces. And this is primarily being driven by the phenomena that we like to call hybrid, right? We have found that after the challenges that we faced in the past couple of years, that we needed to shift how teaching and learning happened, and the spaces had to evolve in line with all of this. Adi, when we talk about the digital transformation of education spaces, right, whether it is universities or whether it is K1 to K12, right, what are you seeing with the projects that you are working on? How is this digital transformation actually happening?
Okay, so it's happening when there's technology in let's say in the classroom. Like for example, 10 maybe 20 years ago, they're still using a projector. Now I think back to 5-10 years ago, they started using a digital display, for example, interactive flat panel. And for the audio system, they're using a ceiling microphone. And now I think just starting 2020, video conferencing is becoming popular. I think those items, as we know, is the digital modern tools. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question, Adi. How is video conferencing the central component that is making all these changes happen around it? Just the fact that you now need to teach students in the classroom, and you also need to teach students who are not in the classroom. What are your thoughts about video conferencing and its role in the digital transformation of education spaces?
I think it's becoming more popular since the online classroom. Nowadays, they're using it for a big town hall, like a big in auditorium. In the classroom, I think the demand, I think, becoming less and less nowadays.
Andrew, you're on the side of creating the tools that will digitally transform an education space. How has Maxhub been approaching this new phenomena of hybrid learning or hybrid teaching, hybrid classrooms? What have you been doing to tweak or change your Maxhub solutions to cater to this new way of learning?
If we just add a bit of what Eddie has explained, and we see that the evolution of the projectors to the interactive flat panels, and during the pandemic, and then we see the usage of video cameras, but this all happened in a rush. So we see a lot of schools that immediately come up with tender with project. They need our cameras, like Eddie mentioned, speakerphone, or the silly microphones. This is all the requirements coming to a project. But now the pandemic is gone and the dust has settled, and we do see that instead of having all these different components inside the classroom or even in the setup in the town hall video conferencing system, we should have a system that is more complete and more comprehensive and have everything built into one. So that's why we come out with our complete smart room or smart classroom solutions. So this platform will have all the components that Eddie mentions in the multimedia classroom, in the intelligence classroom, but all built into a single platform under Maxhub. So we have digital panels, but on the digital panels, you have the cameras, you can have the microphone, and you also can extend into a recording or capturing system with a silly microphone, as well as intelligence tracking cameras. So all can be set up neatly. So the advantage of this setup is that it's more easy to manage for the school, for the installer as well. So when you have everything under one roof, so if the classroom now is not just a component or the tools, but actually the whole classroom become more intelligent or smart classroom. The IT can manage the classroom to the panels, to the speakerphone, to the video device. So everything can be managed from the IT perspective, and from the teacher perspective, all the coursework can now be delivered from the laptop to the interactive flat panels. So this means that the teacher, there is better resource management of the contents. They can use the laptop to project onto the big screen or the interactive flat panels. At the same time, they can also log in to the interactive flat panels and deliver the lessons through the interactive flat panels. They don't need to bring the laptop from room to room. They can just bring the ID or their login detail to the flat panels, because all the coursework will be, the resources will be managed on the cloud.
Joe, your thoughts about the broader digital transformation?
Well, I think what's been shared really well here with the technology that we're talking about is that it's not about each time you introduce a new piece of tech, it's not about transforming how kids learn, because that's going to be really hard, right? And a lot of teachers are gonna not like that, to be honest. If you come in with this piece of tech and say, hey, we're going to transform the classroom, transform that, that's not going to work. What I've really liked about this so far is it's about incremental change and enhancing what the learning is and what's already there, right? So an example that I had, I mean, in my last role, I was training 20,000 teachers in Asia per year, right? So I visited a lot of schools. I saw, a lot of great tech, and a lot of common themes within that technology was that it was straightforward and it enhanced what was already there, right? So for example, I went into one classroom and they were studying art, right? So how do you introduce technology in art when you're painting and drawing and stuff like that? In their homework, they uploaded their artwork online and kids can comment on the artwork, right? Critique it, write about it and things like that, right? Then they come into the classroom and then they can talk about it, right? So they've already had that kind of pre-conversation first in the comments. That is, right, enhancing learning. That's using technology. It's not fundamentally changing anything. It's actually saving time, right? And another great piece of tech that I saw in an international school here actually a few years ago was they were learning about the human heart and the brain and all that kind of stuff, right? Instead of putting it up, they had this piece of tech that you actually stand inside. So you stand inside and the human, right, as some kind of AI comes up, right? And you can actually point at things, right? And it's around you, right? In that kind of immersive world, right? And that kind of experience improves student grades, right? So you're still doing the same lesson and the same learning, but how they're learning in that, you know, incremental change has been transformed in that sense. So I'd say, you know, that's what I've seen in terms of the common themes.
Adi, when you are going to these projects and you're designing new systems for education spaces, are you seeing that incremental change in there? Do they just want to change small amounts of things, or are you seeing like, no, you know, because maybe they haven't upgraded for a while, that they need to skip some steps and make some big changes? So essentially what I'm trying to ask is, what kind of solutions are you designing? Are they a big jump from what was previously installed, or are they small changes to what was already being installed in classrooms and universities and lecture theaters?
Okay. So basically, we're just tailoring to what their needs. Let's say if they wanna up their accreditation level in the education system, maybe they have to invest their money in the new tech. For example, new auditorium. They have to invest in a big videotron that can connect to the interactive flat panels. So every material that we can write it down on the interactive flat panel can appear on the big videotron. Yep. That way, that investment alone can raise the accreditation level.
Interesting. I want to jump on to something that Joe mentioned, which is the teachers, right? These are the people who are going to be in these spaces. These are the people who are going to be operating this technology. And what we have found is that teachers are sometimes reluctant to change. They're a bit hesitant to kind of like adopt new practices. Something's been working for a very long time and they want to stick with it. Now, they've had to change, right? I think all of them have become very proficient with Zoom and video conferencing, but expecting them to learn about technology and how to get familiarized with new tools is something where, hey, it would be nice to help them out a lot. Joe, in your opinion, how do you get teachers to adopt this digital transformation, adopt these new tools that are being delivered to them so that we can use them fully?
This question is quite big. So if I go on a little bit, please, you know, tell me to stop. We can move on to someone else. You know, I work in the adult learning space. I've been around for 10 years now, consulting teachers, companies, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, often I'll advise clients, they want training, and I'll often tell them, no, don't start with training. Training is the end. That's the, you know, end of the change process. And I think when EdTech made a huge splash, I don't know, 8-10 years ago or something like that, right? So all these schools buying in huge amounts of tech, we're going to transform the cloud, transform learning. Most of that has left the classroom now, right? And the solution to teachers not using that tech, that was training. Let's just put them on training courses and that's all going to be good. It didn't work, right? And one of the primary reasons for that is you can't just present a solution to schools and just hope that they, you know, would integrate that into the classroom, right? So there is a model for technology acceptance. And there's basically two main areas of that model. It has got to be perceived as being a good, useful tool into the classroom, right? So if you're just trying to sell something based on you think that it's great, that's not going to work. The teachers themselves have to actually see that as a, you know, a good piece of tech that is going to help them in the classroom. And there's all kinds of personality stuff and all kinds of things that I can talk about next. And the other one is, how easy is it to use this piece of tech, right? So if it's very complicated, we have to take a step back here and think, yes, Asia has adopted technology really fast, but the education space on a broad level is changing very fast as well. So my last company, we were going into schools. There's a lot of curriculum changes going on, right? And countries like South Korea, Japan, all countries around Southeast Asia are transforming how students learn, right? They're moving away from like rote learning and things like that, much more to skills, stuff like that. So if you have to think about that, teachers are having to have a huge cultural shift right now, right? So if companies are coming in saying, hey, look, there's this great piece of tech, think of the stresses already on those kind of teachers. They're already doing lots of transformation programs, right? So what you have to do is come in and think, okay, what are the incremental changes here? And how is this going to help you in these transformation changes, right? So and I've been talking a lot, I'll just go on to three key points here and some of the areas. So the three areas to look at the most are, what are the norms within that school, right? And you can't take, 100 schools and say, look, that is the kind of norm. Each school has its own culture and its own values. So what are the subjective norms within that school? Is there a school leader who is championing tech and things like that, right? So does the school have that? That's one of the first things. Second one is, what are the skills of those teachers? If you're trying to sell a piece of tech and they're uncomfortable with that because they don't have those skills, that's going to be a hard sell, right? And unfortunately, when you're trying to implement tech across a whole school, it's sometimes either all teachers or it's no, right? So that buy-in and change is going to be tough, right? And the last one is the school actively facilitating that? Are they championing change, right? Are they behind that change, right? And a lot of education, at a very high level around the world, it's very top down, right? Very senior people are saying, hey, this is great, adopt this, adopt that. When it gets to a school level, there's a different culture, right? Schools are at their own pace of change and things like that. So unfortunately, if you're trying to sell tech into schools, it is tough, right? Because you do have to appreciate the different cultural, values and things behind that to those schools. So that's a very broad look, I think, at the current state of the market there. Yeah, I will stop now and pass on to a panelist so I don't go on too long. But yeah,
that was very insightful. It's very interesting to see that like every single school is its own little thing. They've got their unique little culture, and obviously you want to influence that, but you have limited agency to influence it. One of the things that I really liked that you mentioned was that the tech itself needs to be intuitive. It needs to be easy to adopt. Andrew, is that something you take into consideration when designing your solutions for education at Maxhub? Is that something where you're like, hey, we understand that a teacher needs to be able to use this, so we've got to maybe focus more on making it easy to use, intuitive, rather than trying to pack it with as many features as possible?
Yeah, exactly. I think how we become the number one in China. So Maxhub solutions for the education is number one in China for the 10 consecutive year. Because exactly it is what we learned from the market is we need to understand what actually is the teacher needs, like what Joe explained. So we need to provide an incremental improvement on the solutions. So how to help teachers to improve the lesson delivery. So if we cannot get us like one solution for all the teachers, we will try to make our solution more flexible, more adaptable for the majority of the teachers. Just for the one example is like when we first launched the interactive flat panels, so some of the older generation of lecturer or teachers, they might not want to use the touch panels. They still prefer the old way to use a writing board, use the chalk, or even use the marker pens. So our solution will get at all of them. So even in our smart intelligence classroom solutions, in the center will be interactive flat panels. At the bottom, on the left and the right-hand side, we have a normal writing board. So the lectures, the different lectures that come in, they can still use the use the writing board to use marker pen to write. And even our interactive flat panel itself, we have this we have the AGH technologies. So you can also use chalk or also use a liquid pen to write on the interactive flat panels. So the whole wall, it becomes just like a normal whiteboard or blackboard. So the lecturer can start to do all the writings and formula on it. So that is how one way to gather the needs for the older generation and more tech-savvy teachers. Another popular usage of the smart classroom is the projections. How the teachers to project the coursework, how students to project the coursework, and how to provide this collaborative interactions of the discussion sort of a learning experience. So for the younger, for current generation or the more tech-savvy teachers, they may like to use the wireless technologies. They want to use AirPlay, Chromecast, Mirrorcast, all these technology to stream all the contents conveniently. But again, for the older generation, then maybe they still want to use a HDMI from the PC or Type-C from the laptop or MacBook. So all this can still be the habit of teaching doesn't change, but we provide the evolution of maybe after a few lessons, then the older generation to see how the younger generation teachers to teach. Maybe they'll start to learn, oh, this is a good way. We can digitize all the writings into a digital format. And then we don't need to write every time. For the one time you digitize the writing or the coursework, you can repeatedly use it for different lessons. So this saves a lot of time and money as well for the teachers. So these are a few ways that the digital transformation will help the school. Yeah.
Adi, from your perspective, you deploy the technology in these digital classrooms, in these smart classrooms. How much training are you finding that you need to do? How much interaction do you have once the project is complete to help these universities or schools manage the technology and make sure that they're getting the full potential out of it?
Okay, so we are working together with the foundation as the school leaders. They are the one who are championing the change to all of their teachers. So I think it will take around one to 2 months for the initial training session, and then our 1-year warranty is covering that. So if they need us to train their teachers, old teachers or new teachers, yeah, it can cover in 1 year time.
Yeah, that's perfect. That you're there for your client for 1 year after that to ensure that, hey, if they need support and they need help, you'll be there to help them make sure that the technology is being used properly.
Yes, correct.
Joe, I had one follow-up question. You mentioned a tech champion or an individual being evangelical about technology in a school setting, and you talked about identifying that person as being like someone who's important to help, spread that message and get buy-in from the different stakeholders. Yeah. In the absence of someone like that, how do you talk tech with teachers who might, like we talked about, might be hesitant to change? How do you start disseminating the message of, hey, this technology is here to help you. We're not here to push something specific your way, but we're asking you to be open and consider a bunch of different options that might have better outcomes for you?
That's a very good question, to be honest. And honestly, one of the best models I've seen is that kind of champion model, right? So I've got a great example from a school here, which I can't name, to be honest. I wish I could, but essentially they're bringing in all this tech, and this one person decided to buy their own technology out of their own cash, because they wanted this. They had a need, and then they wanted this. And then other teachers started to, look over their shoulder and go, hey, that person, and it was working really well within his classroom. So then the school then took that technology on, right? So that champion approach honestly is the best way. But of course, if you have something that is completely new and the school has, never heard of it, it is hard to kind of get into that market space. What I would say is, you've got to make teachers feel comfortable with your brand first, and make them feel comfortable that you're there to help them and not just to, palm off, like the latest tech. Because I can tell you one of the big problems with EdTech is that there's a lot of companies out there that have started with the technology and then gone to schools, right? That's the wrong way around. So you got to start with the need first and then build the technology, right? And I can, hear from the panels that has been working well, right? that kind of thing. So what I would say is you've got to get involved in, teacher forums, talks, panels and things like that, right? You've got to get your branding out there. You've got to get teachers to kind of know about you, things like that. Because unfortunately, if you want to get into schools, they're going to have to feel comfortable, and they've got to have to feel like that you're not just, like another company, right? So you've got to get your name out there a little bit. Unfortunately, there are a lot of forums out there, right? There's a lot of teacher conferences. Teachers do love to hear about the latest trends in learning and development, right? They might be resistant to change at times for, various reasons, but they do like to hear about the latest, trends in learning, classroom teaching skills, all that kind of stuff. When I was at my last company, I spoke at our regional conference in Adelaide in February. We had nearly 2,000 teachers there, right? And they were flying in, right? All to hear about the latest in tech. And I actually did present. We were building a new learning and development platform for our schools there, and I actually spoke there, right? And it was a packed room of teachers that want to hear about the latest technology in schools, right? Going back and actually making that behavioral change, that's a whole nother thing. But I would say, it's not too difficult to get your name out there if you're proactive, right? Don't come in with a sales pitch. Come in with the perceived value of your technology first.
Yeah, it's it's so interesting that you mentioned that there was a teacher that was willing to dip into their own pocket, because it's like you said, they might be hesitant to change, but they are very, very, very dedicated to their profession of teaching. They don't really look at it as a career or a job. It's more of a calling, and you can always rely on their passion to positively impact students. To talk to them about tech and how that can help them do that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I was running workshops just in my school group for 20,000 teachers per year, and they would scramble to get on those workshops, right? Teachers want to keep learning. They want to keep improving, right? It's about when you're introducing technology, then it becomes a change management program, right? So that's not the simple case of incremental, improving your classroom skills. Now you've got change, which curates, anxiety, fear, all that stuff, right? So as a business, you got to get around that, right? So you got to connect with people, right? At that level. If you just focus on the tech only, you're not going to hit them, right? On that kind of very personal level, right? And the human level.
Yeah. I want to shift the focus over to students, the other big end user in these technology dense education spaces. Andrew, if you could detail how the latest range of Maxhub solutions result in better outcomes for students. How does Maxhub technology help students learn better and perform better in education spaces?
Okay. So I think we are in the alpha generation now. So the younger generation they are more adaptive to education. So they are also looking for more responsive type of education. That's why if you ask them just to read from the textbook, that's maybe not going to work. So some of the students that maybe like to be more visualized in the educations. So that's why with our interactive flat panels, we are not just selling, like what Joe said, selling the hardware, selling the tools, and then let them figure out how to use it. We actually just come with complete software. So the software we will also provide the trainings and all the video trainings or in-person trainings. So let the teacher knows how to create a coursework using a different template. So we try to minimize the learning curve for the teachers. So once they design the coursework based on the gamifications, and then the students, when they use this type of coursework to answer the questions, to learn the subject, then it's more easy for them to absorb, and is more engaging and more interactive for the students. And the other ways, and also if we look at students, so not all the students have the same capability of learning. So some maybe have a faster pace of learning, some may be slower. So what we also developed in terms of adaptive learning is to have teachers at the center, in the center of the classroom, but it will be able to monitor all the device or all the coursework by the student in real time. is called our Maxhub Classroom Pro solutions. So the teacher will be able to see which students have done a good coursework. Then it can bring that to the front of the room display and to share and discuss with the class, with the whole class. So that way the students will be able to see how to do the questions, how to do the coursework, and also all this is now on the cloud. So which means the teachers, when they're teaching, the student can also make their notes on their own device, and this will be saved onto the cloud. So for some of the students, maybe after the classroom, they still only learn maybe at like 10 or 20%. So because all this content is recorded and also the captures on the clouds, and the student will be able to log into their accounts and then to repeat the study and to check all the notes and annotation he makes for their lessons, and then he can repeat and repeat to make the learning a level going up. So this is how we will try to help out in terms of the student learning pace.
Adi, your thoughts on students and how digitally transformed classrooms and education spaces are impacting them? Are your clients coming to you and telling you, hey, thank you so much for deploying all this technology. My students are performing better. They're performing better on their test scores, things like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so for example, during the pandemic, right? All the students, they go to school, they go to online school. They can all participate from their own house. So the digital modern, let's say, they can, it enables them to participate from their own house, and then they can, let's say, it's more collaborative that way. It becomes a two-way learning for them, not just a one-way like the old school.
I think that's one of the keywords, a two-way learning. So that's why we try to make the teachers and the students, all the devices can collaborate on the same platforms.
Yeah, correct.
Joe, I'm going to reframe this question for you a little bit. You know, when you're interacting with teachers and you're talking to them and you're trying to understand their pain points, right? Obviously, one of the things that they want to get across and one of the metrics that they're measured on is student performance, right? Like, what are the test scores? What are the average test scores? How many people are doing well? Things like that. That's just the metric that we have in pedagogy to kind of gauge who's a good teacher and who's a bad teacher. When they convey this over to you, when they talk about student performance, what are the conversations you're having? What kind of pain points are they bringing forward? And just generally, what kind of discussions are you having with these teachers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on grades still, but one good thing I think, which is going to help the technology market a lot, is the model is moving away from constant exams and grades, right? So Ministry of Education here has massively reduced primary school tests and exams, right? And that's going to be moving upwards in the next couple of years as well, right? And we've seen that shift happening in and a lot of international schools are trialing less tests and exams as well, right? So I think the model of education is moving much more towards less about learning a topic and passing a test. It's becoming more about transferable skills, about life skills and things like that. How can we prepare students for the world of work? Because essentially, I've worked in corporate training for 10 years now. A lot of training that I've done in the past for young people has been basic stuff like communication skills, right? How to write effectively online and stuff like that, right? So schools are realizing this, and they're realizing that instead of just trying to teach a particular thing, how can we teach as much transferable skills? And I think that technology adoption is really key in terms of this, right? Because obviously in the world of work, we have to use tech and technology as well. So we want to get the kids used to that at, a young age, right? How young? That's another conversation, I think. But this is something that, that we can talk about now. And we want kids to be comfortable with using technology in their work, because if they're not, when they get to the world of work, they're going to feel that, huge change, things like that. So I think the winds that education is changing in, I think, is playing into the hands, I think, of technology providers out there. So I think the pressure on grades is still there, you know, because of university entry and things like that. But I would say the model is changing. And I think technology that can focus on more life skills, collaboration, communication, those key soft skills that corporates, you know, keep talking about, right? Whenever we move to the corporate world, it's the same set of skills that they're always after, right? Can they pitch a project? Can they collaborate? Can they work with people? Can they manage people? All that kind of stuff, right? The adoption of technology in schools is going to help that process. You know, some of the examples, you know, in terms of collaboration, some of the technology that we've spoken about here. So I would say if your tech is focused more on where education is moving to, then I think that adoption of your tech is going to be higher.
Andrew, Joe just highlighted a bunch of things about how tech preferences are changing. Some of the things that he highlighted were, hey, we want the tech to mimic what they're going to use in their professional lives once they go out and become adults. I think Maxhub interactive flat panels are perfect for this. They're going to give them a sense of, hey, this is what a meeting room is like, because Maxhub solutions aren't just meant for education. They're also meant for corporate spaces and for multiple other applications. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I think we can also see the change of the classroom layout now, because of the importance of the communication and discussions. So we see some of the classrooms that separate into different islands. So each of the group, they were mimicking corporate discussions. So each of the island will have its own interactive flat panels. So they can do the discussion, collaboration, and then they can project everything into the interactive flat panels. At the same time, all these interactive flat panels is linked to the lecturer's main display. So the lecturer will be able to do co-collaboration annotations on the main screen as well. So all this is like what Joe is explaining. So education is not just to learn from theories, but how to apply these functional learnings. So once you have this type of discussion, you know how to interact and how to use the technologies to the advantage when you get into a corporate world. So you will become the one that can maximize your efficiency and productivity in working life. Yeah.
Adi, you design and deliver and integrate education spaces, but I'm assuming you also do corporate spaces and you do a lot of other different spaces. Are you beginning to see similarities with classrooms and meeting rooms? Are you, because I'm seeing it, right? Like the ceiling microphones, for example, are commonly used in both, right? When previously in education, it would primarily be like a handheld microphone or a lapel microphone. Are you seeing similarities in the design for classrooms and corporate spaces?
Yeah, of course, especially after the pandemic hit, the school, they have no choice. But nowadays, so school becoming more like meeting rooms, like a big meeting rooms. They have interactive flat panels there. They have a ceiling microphone, speakers, and they have cameras. Yeah, they're becoming more like a meeting room nowadays.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm seeing that as well, and I find it very funny because I've been in the AV industry for a while as well, and I'm seeing this gradual shift. Speaking of gradual shifts, we've got a question here from the audience, which is about a shift that is happening in these education spaces. So as we know, right, projection has been the dominant visual technology in the education space for a very long time. It still retains a very large chunk of the market share in education spaces. But the question is about projection versus flat panels. And I'd like to throw this to Andrew specifically to kind of talk about what a flat panel brings to the table that projection is not able to deliver for a classroom.
One of the, I think we will see the evolution of the classroom is first they have the TV screen, and then they move, when they want to go into interactive flat panels or interactive technologies, the first is the intermediate solution is called the interactive whiteboard. The interactive whiteboard provides the touch or the touch interaction, but they're using the short throw projectors to project onto the screen. So, or some in some classroom they're using just projectors, but if you compare these the technologies, they are obviously the light and the reflections is completely different. And then What one of the advantage of our interactive flat panel is we have this anti-glare projections, and at the same time we also have the TUV certification for eyes comfort, for the anti-flickering, as well as low blue light. So when you're looking at the projection for long hours, like in the class, also for the 8 hours, you can't have just projectors in the dark room. It's not good. Your eyes get very strained. So with this technology is built into the interactive flat panels. So this will preserve the vision for our kids and also to protect the eyes. But this is one also of the advantage of, we see a lot of schools, previously they use interactive whiteboard, even though they spend a lot of money on it, but they still move to the interactive flat panels with the 4K or more a vibrant display. At the same time, all the panel is still protecting the end user eyes. Yeah.
Adi, Andrew's done a very good job of explaining what interactive flat panels bring to the table that projection does not. But as an integrator, both of them are just tools that you need to use. So how do you guide your clients towards one visual display or another? Are you finding that more and more people are adopting interactive flat panels and projection is becoming less? How do you have this conversation with clients?
Yeah, okay. Since the interactive flat panels, they can be flexible. We can use a standing bracket so we can move them around. Compared to the projection, they have to be a fixed installation. Okay. So I think, yeah, it depends on what their needs.
Okay. In your opinion, how much is interactivity an important consideration? Are clients really asking for interactivity? What are their thoughts about this kind of like, hey, we do need touch, we do need to be able to, you know, write on these with chalk or with a liquid pen, things like that?
Mm-hmm. I think most of them are looking for the interactivity. In that way, we can be more collaborative, more communicative. Yeah, both two-ways learning between teachers and students.
Maybe I'll just add a bit. It's not, sometimes it's not just for teachers alone, but the students, they try to, because when we see the interactive flat panel being introduced to the classroom, and also with the gamification of the coursework, the students start to try to do more engaging, because they can play the games in front of the screen. So if you compare the student to go to the classroom with just a blackboard, or go to the classroom with the interactive flat panels, the learning experience and the engagement is completely different.
Interesting. Joe, I have a question for you about interactivity and specifically student participation, right? We've talked so much about how teachers are all different, every school is different, every culture is different, right? And there is this cultural shift that is happening, which is being accelerated by Gen Alpha, right? Like, we're waiting for them to enter the workforce and then figure out how to deal with them, but teachers are having to deal with them right now, right? This is a completely different generation. They're digital natives. They have a completely different worldview. They communicate in different ways. So student participation or student interactivity, how is that being rolled into pedagogy, especially when, you know, teachers are old sometimes, they might not really understand the difference or the shift in cultures, which have been exacerbated by the advances in technology and how these younger generations are communicating. It's a very big problem to kind of solve, but it, like I said, education needs to deal with Gen Alpha first, and then the workspaces are going to deal with them later.
Yeah, I mean, so my last company is working for, you know, international schools, right? So with this student, so what we call in education is student agency, is I think is the term that, you know, that we're talking about here, and it's becoming the fundamental core of learning in schools, right? So obviously teachers have a leadership role to play in the education space, right? But the big question in education right now is how much can we get the students to lead their own learning, right? And I won't go into too complex the models. There's essentially 7 models of student agency, or maybe 9. You know, there's a few levels that we can go here. But the very top one is you walk into a classroom and the students choose their own tasks, choose their own learning and stuff like that, right? It's a very high level. I don't think many schools have that. That's very difficult, I think, to achieve. And at only a certain level can you achieve that. But at a very low level, right, it's about, you know, our students, do they have some control over their own learning and some choice, right? Can they choose a bit of their own learning pathway, you know, and things like that? And that's definitely one of the foundational, you know, aspects of learning that is changing around the world. You know, international schools have had student agency for, you know, like a number of years. National school systems, some have had it, some it's coming in, but it's definitely a shift that is happening right now. And I would see technology as a fundamental, you know, part of that change, right? I mean, part of student agency is, can they use technology to find out information by themselves? Can they use technology to collaborate when they're, you know, if a student can't come to school for, you know, any reason, we can still use tech to help them learn and interact with them and things like that, right? Some schools have experimented with work, you know, students staying at home some days of the week, right? E-learning and stuff like that. That is coming in too. So, you know, and it's all developing a different range of skills in schools. But I would see a lot of what we're talking about here is helping students take more control over their, you know, own learning journeys and things like that. And I think when you have technology that is simple to use, but let's say has a range of apps, right? This is a very crude way of talking about it, right? Instead of, so a way of looking at it, that in a more old school way of teaching, you could say a teacher sets a task. They set the parameters of that task. They set the scope and the goals and the KPIs. You know, I'm sorry, I'm using my, you know, like a corporate speak there, you know, so and you've got all that, right? But if we transform that, what if you gave them the end goal and then said, there you go off and work it out, right? Giving them the agency. You can use the technology, you can use paper, anything that you like. Or what if you even don't give them the end goal, just give them the concept of the final piece, and they have to work out what that end goal is, right? So when we're talking about the evolution of students, agency here, right? We're moving away from very, very structured way of, you know, tasks for kids with very defined goals and outcomes to a much more, you know, finding a pathway, finding your own goals and outcomes. And again, that links back to what are the skills are they learning in all of that? Skills to think, skills to work together, skills on, you know, presenting, you know, like managing their peers, all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, technology is a fundamental part of that change and shift. Yeah, so I didn't want to go too kind of you know, technical in terms of some of the implication changes. That's kind of
no, I mean, that's what you're here for.
Also, so if I could add a bit on this topic, this is very interesting. I think this is exactly why we need to go to digital learning or e-learning spaces, because you don't know how the student performs if you only mark on the papers. So that's why I think Joe also explained that we're going to move into the e-assessment. So by using this digital assessment, so each of the questions, they will have different type of tag or categories inside. So when the student answer question 1, 2, 3, if they can't answer question number 1, then the teachers will know is weak on certain fields. So it could be the weakness could be in science, could be in math, it could be in the calculations. So with this type of e-assessments, then the teacher with all this data, then even with AI in the future, they will be able to see what is the strength and weakness of these particular students. So from there, then the next question or next coursework, then it will give to the student will be that maybe you have to improve on certain fields, and then to complete your learning journeys. So this type of structure, I think we are going to develop it into our solution as well.
Andrew, a follow-up question on a similar kind of topic. One of the best ways to deal with Gen A or Gen Alpha is to deal with them via their devices, right? With their smartphone, because they're always on it, right? That's what we always say. Do the Maxhub solutions, the interactive flat panels, do they incorporate smart devices, things like iOS, mirror sharing and costing from personal devices. Is that something that you are considering to enable students to be a bit more participate a bit more?
Yeah, I think exactly. I think that is why when we go to the cloud or go to the to the digital learning platforms, then it will be like sort of like platform free. So you can choose any platform that or any personal device that's convenient to you. You can use the Android apps. You can use the Chromebook with the Chrome browser, or you can use the iPad or laptops. Then all these devices, because it's can connected to the teacher's platform on the cloud. So this means that you are not restricted to only for Apple, for Google, or Microsoft. So all this will work from the cloud platforms. Yeah.
There's a question from the audience, which I think is directed towards Andrew from Maxhub. The audience member is asking if you offer any training for your products for teachers, specifically the end users, and also I'm assuming for the people who are out there deploying it. So this could be training in person, this could be training materials that you provide online. What are some of the resources that people can access if they want to learn how to deploy Maxhub products and learn how to use Maxhub products?
Okay. So for there's a different type of learning material we have. So one is for the partners. We have our Maxhub College. So with all our partners, they will be able to enroll to this Maxhub College and then to learn all our hardware solutions and the software solutions. And because we see that Asian is a very diverse market, and you have people speaking Vietnamese, Thai, Indonesian, Bahasa. So all these, that's why we have specialists in each of the countries. So we have a specialist for the educations that will be able to, depends on the project, on the scale. So normally we will train our partners so that our partners like Eddie will be able to provide the service and trainings to the end users. But we also have developed some of the a close relationship with some of the key schools. So if we, like you mentioned, have a champion teachers, a champion school. So this side, we will also try to educate the community of teachers. So once we train this type of champion school, they will be influenced to the colleagues, to the school in the region. So this way we will be able to have a wider coverage of the trainings. But in short, we will provide trainings to our partners and also for the end users on our solution. We also develop a video studies like what I explained on our Maxhub College for our partners to learn. Yeah.
Adi, a question from my side for you. One of the things that I've been seeing is that these education spaces, once they become digitally transformed, they have a lot more technology in them, right? Previously, you could say that they were a bit more analog, but now they're very digital. They have a lot of technology. And as we know, technology needs to be maintained. It needs to be monitored. Someone needs to take care of it. And if every classroom becomes very technology dense, then the university staff or the school staff might not be able to keep up with monitoring it. It might become too much work for them. Are you seeing this in your projects? Are you helping out clients, make sure that their technology investment is running and is delivering and it's operating and it's not just broken down or in need of maintenance?
Yeah, sure. That's what we offer to our clients, to all our clients. Managed service, usually along with the warranty, usually 3 to 5 years. Yeah, that's what we offer to them, managed services.
Yeah. And have found that more people are more interested, especially in the education sector, about managed services now that everything is so technology dense.
Yes, correct. They spend a lot of money on that, so they don't want to bother.
Yeah, of course.
That's
I mean, if you're investing in technology and it's not working, you're not getting any return on your investment.
Correct. Yes.
Andrew, could you maybe highlight how Maxhub supports its partners to make sure that if a Maxhub product is developed, number one, it can be remotely managed and monitored, and number two, if it does break down in the unusual case, how does Maxhub support its partners and the end user?
Okay, for in terms of the product, the different range of products, so we'll provide a 3 years warranty. So if the product is covered within the 3-year warranties, if it can be fixed by ourselves, then we will fix it. If not, then we will try to swap and replace it, and then we will take back the faulty unit, and then we will repair it on ourselves. Yeah. So in terms of the warranty support, it depends on, for some of the country we already have our branch office or local setup. There's more then we could help to do the warranty and services. But for some of the country that we also partner with our distributors. So we will have a buffer and the support for the spare part. So that means the turnaround, you don't need to send the device back to China. So we will help with the spare part. We will fix it. If not fix it, then we will have the buffer stock that we will be able to do the replacement as well to cover the warranty. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think there are no more questions from the audience. So I will just ask Joe one last thing from my side. Joe, crystal ball, what do you think teachers are going to need in terms of tech? You don't have to pick a particular product, but if you could pick a particular feature set, perhaps. Do you want to go completely off field and talk about AR, VR, mixed reality, AI, or do you want to stay within the realm of, current developments and go like, hey, we need more interactivity, we need...
I feel like whatever I say here is probably going to be wrong. When it's famous when you make a prediction in tech, right? I mean, always happens. But I think virtual reality could creep into schools in the next few years. I've seen it in the adult world. Adoption's not going to be that quick overnight, but I can see it happening in the future. And again, it's about enhancing experience, right? So some applications for VR could be, if you're nervous at public speaking, put the VR on and there's a bunch of people in the audience, right? I know some tech that is there currently where it can track, are you, engaging the audience, taking a look around, moving around, this kind of stuff, hand gestures, and your body language, all those kind of things. So that is a great training tool that I know is being adopted in some corporate spaces.
Corporate onboarding is where I've
seen stuff like that. And I think that starting in the corporate world, it could filter down to schools at some point. I mean, the barriers there are clear. It's expensive. It's, tech that can break. A kid throws it on the floor, drops it, so it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But in terms of virtual reality, being in that virtual world, I think could be something that we could see in the next 5 to 10 years. But yeah, as I say, it's tech, right?
Yeah, it's hard to predict how it's going to evolve.
Yeah.
With that, we have come to the end of our time today. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that the discussion was valuable for you. And to our panelists, thank you so much for devoting your time and sharing your expertise and sharing your opinions. We will be back next time with a new partner discussing a new topic that is relevant to the world of technology and to the world of AV. Once again, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you guys.
See you.